Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Stiff Upper Lip podcast. We've had a few weeks off for various reasons, just being busy. It's Christmas, and pretty much all of the other sort of usual late autumn, early winter time stuff in terms of illnesses and just busyness, really. But we have got 3 people here instead of a full host, as Ed sadly couldn't make it. So let's start then with Mr. Max Saito. How are you, Max?
Not good, sadly, mate. Not good because realised I ran out of the coffee that I normally use in my mocha pot, so I've had to use Flo's coffee, which I can never remember the name of. The only thing that comes to mind is Lavezzi, but obviously he's a former Argentinian forward for PSG. I can't even remember what. I can't, it's like in a red and silver packet, but the ground's wrong. It's just horrible. It's awful. But other than that, yeah, fine. Thanks, mate.
You're not grinding fresh, brother?
I mean, I am, but in terms of coffee, no.
Okay. You've got to apportion your time one way or another.
Yeah, and Sam, you choose to spend it by doing fucking chemistry every time that you make a single cup of
Will not be chastised for my commitment to well-brewed coffee.
He had to take his special kettle to Scotland on his honeymoon.
How are you doing?
It's just a gooseneck kettle, okay? Water distribution. I'm doing great.
Are you both ready for Christmas?
Kind of. We've got the tree up now, so it feels a little more Christmassy.
In a manner of speaking.
Hasn't really felt that Christmassy this year, but I'm sure I'll get there.
Very nice, very nice.
How many pieces of Christmas cake have you eaten with cheese so far this year, Sam?
So this year or December?
This month. So it's 11 days into the month.
I think.
Oh, that's not too bad. I've not eaten anything Christmassy yet.
I'm due another Christmas cake soon. So I'm probably gonna be. Our ratio's gonna increase.
Okay. Just quickly, chappers. I know we said we didn't want to talk about it at the start, but win, play, show your top 3 Christmas sweet treats.
I'm gonna sound like a real heathen here, but I don't actually care for too many of the actual traditional Christmas sweet treats. Like, I don't like mince pies. I don't like Christmas cake. I don't like Christmas pudding. I think it'd basically be Yule log, and then it's pretty much like everything else is just sort of off the cuff. I don't like it. I'm not even a big Yule log person. Same question to you, Sam.
I'm a big Christmas pudding head. So I'd say Christmas pudding win. Probably a mince pie. Christmas pudding, mince pie, Yule log.
Okay.
Great. Marvelous. Max, just to round it off.
The only thing I would say is that if you're going to eat mince pies, I don't really understand the point in. I can't sit there and eat 6 mince pies, so I'll just buy like a really nice one and just enjoy that.
That just one nice mince pie. It's quite the experience. Now, if I could just.
Oh, Carl, come on.
If I could just before we move on, does eggnog count as a sweet treat or a drink?
I don't care. Shut the hell up.
Marvelous. No, go on.
Mildly addicted to the Starbucks eggnog lattes and drank 5 in one day. Not knowing.
What did that do to you, man?
Well, I didn't know that they were 780 calories a pop.
Fucking hell.
Holy God. That's like 1/5 of the smallest, least calorific drinking at Dunkin' Donuts.
So you drank 3,500 calories in just eggnog?
Yeah, I lived a day as Ben Affleck.
I think that's what
without the cigarettes and the divorce.
after they ran out of supplies and after they'd eaten all the dogs, I'm pretty sure that's what Robert Falcon Scott's party did in Antarctica. Five or six nogs a day to keep them going.
Oh, good heavens. Oh, speaking of divorces, we are preparing a little segment for you this time. Since we had a little sulp wedathon over the course of the last few months, we've sort of brought you a sort of idea about marriages. Now, we've got 3 criteria. We've got people that need to get together, sort of like a matchmaking Cupid situation. We've got marriages that are pretty much set to last, and then we've also got marriages that are on the rocks. Now we're going to be sort of going around the horn, dropping some of that. Who wants to go first? Because I'm happy to go first with my one.
Yeah, I think you should let it rip.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start nice and positive here, and also drop something on you. I'm gonna say that marriage that will last is gonna be Dan Quinn in Washington. Now, my sort of main thinking for Dan Quinn in Washington being a marriage that would last is that this is a team that has been completely unserious for 35 years. There hasn't been any semblance of anything going on in Washington. And even their playoff appearances have basically all been a bit of a lolcow with the whole of Taylor Heineke. So, from the perspective of that they have now become an actual proper franchise, and I don't just mean this because, like, oh, they're winning a few games. Like, they're a well-coached overall team. They're 4th in the league in completion percentage. Like, they're only 9th in the league for interception thrown percentage. But in terms of all of their sort of usual well-coached metrics, they're number 1 in the NFL on 4th down conversions, which to me says that they're a team that are prepared to risk it, but they're doing it with calculated efficiency. And that to me says that it's a well-coached unit, and I think that it's good that Dan Quinn has sort of repaired his legacy a bit. I know that the end of his Falcons tenure was very rough, but at this point, whose Falcons tenure isn't rough? It's good to have Dan Quinn performing well in a serious Washington Commanders team. So I think that marriage is going to last. They especially have new ownership. It feels good to me. Feels like a good situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, I think it's like earlier we were talking about how weird it is to actually want good things for this franchise. Even those stupid uniforms, like the black ones, like the lines on them for no good reason. Even that's starting to look a little bit better in the cold light of day. So, I think I do think you're right, because it's like when it it's kind of like, to use the marriage analogy, it's like they don't know that they could do better because they've been through so much shit. Like, they've just been through shit relationship after shit relationship, and it's all been undermined by this mysterious puppet master ruining their lives. A little bit like the movie Old Boy, and to not continue the relationship Old Boy metaphor any further, they're basically out now, and to dispel any notions of Old Boy from your mind, Dan Quinn is like they're like, wow, this is awesome. This guy's like a functional human being, and I think that's a solid enough foundation for any marriage.
Hell yeah! All right, who wants to go next? We don't have to do just marriages that'll last.
I mean, mine is also a marriage that'll last for the time being. I feel best about. If one of you has a doomed or match-made scenario,
No, go ahead. I think it's important for us to focus on positivity for once before we get stuck into the good part.
Yeah, before we twist the knife.
Yeah.
marriage that I believe be kind of, made to last. Some kind of suspension of, so there's a contract situation that would need to be worked out, but I believe that Ernest Jones and the Seahawks really are. He has done so well on that defense. He has been a lot better in the run game than I thought he would be, which is great, especially for a Mike McDonald team. A lot hinges on linebacker play. As like when he was the Michigan coordinator, 2021 or something, their linebackers kind of sucked shit, and they did all right against teams on the ground, but the difference, obviously there will be a difference comparing that to his Ravens DC, but how well it all worked compared to that, even taking into account the skill kind of plateau difference when he had good linebackers, was astonishing. And it's quite a complicated scheme. You need quite versatile guys. He is doing really well in the run game. He's fast enough to get to the edge and limit outside game stuff. He's done really well. I think they need to extend that man.
Hey, listen, fair play. It felt like a very sort of low hype type of move when it happened. I don't think that anyone sort of really mentioned it too much outside of just lending it a line in a bulletin breakdown. But
it got packed on to the end of
like a
deadline.
News segment. Yeah. And the Seahawks have traded for Ernest Jones. But in fairness, I don't know if a defensive trade has worked out better this year for any team. Completely turned around the Seahawks defense, which was it felt like quite an unserious unit again. Now suddenly this team could potentially be a little bit frisky in the playoffs, and I think it's quite a lot down to how well Ernest Jones is playing.
Yeah, I think when you talked about linebackers, I think it's a little odd almost to compare them, but he's kind of their Roquan Smith equivalent. And I mean, at the start of they basically hired Mike McDonald because he was known as the oh god, who was it? The offense that they completely managed when he was in Baltimore.
Did they have a couple of games against Shanahan?
Yeah, he was the 49ers killer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So that's why they hired him, obviously in the same division. And, well, they're ahead of the 49ers in the rankings. But I think there was a bit of... The first month or so was a little bit underwhelming. But yeah, no, I think that's nice to see. True romance in the NFL. In Lumen Field.
Illuminating up their lives, baby. All right, Max, which one are you going to start with?
My marriage made to last is one that I think we can all agree on. And it's kind of been an on-off relationship over the last 100 years or so. Mostly on, with occasional periods of off, but it's the relationship between the National Football League and the running back position. For a long time they were completely enamored. In fact, it was really the first love of the NFL. The last 10 years or so, maybe the light sort of died a little bit. They lost the spark. Maybe the NFL's eyes were drawn towards, flashy Patrick Mahomes or whatever. But now I think the running back is sort of gone away, worked on itself a little bit, had some changes of scenery, and discovered itself. And I think now all of a sudden it's not looking so bad, is it? If you look at the list of the top 10, 11 rushers, let's say, hang on, let me count quickly. 11 of the top 11 rushers by yards in the NFL. A bit of a convenient number, I know, but it slightly helps my point. Of the top 11 rushers by yards in the NFL this year, I believe 6 of them were free agents who have signed this year. That would be Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, and Joe Mixon. A few of them are on second contracts. So Tony Pollard is on his Oh, hang on, I didn't include Tony Pollard in the free agent. So like 7 or whatever. There's a couple who are on extensions. So Chuba Hubbard, for example, and Alvin Kamara, both guys who are re-signed to multi-year extensions. And then they've got a couple of guys who are like first-round picks. So Jameer Gibbs and Bijan Robinson are both up that list. And I think it's kind of was Najee Harris in 12th for first-round pick as well?
Yeah, Najee Harris I think was picked like 22nd overall.
Then you've got James Conner, who's obviously multi-year extension. Jonathan Taylor, first-round pick. And the only guy really in that top 15 who doesn't fit that bill is Kyron Williams with the Rams. And, it's a running back-friendly scheme. But I think that it turns out, if you can believe it, that maybe running backs were still valuable the whole time. Just all the best ones were on shit teams with shit offenses. Or, to that, something like that. I mean, I think for Barkley and Jacobs, you probably can say that. So I think it's going to come back in vogue, especially with these lighter boxes, smaller DBs. I mean, nobody wants to see really like your Derrick Henrys, your Josh Jacobs, and your Saquon Barkley's barreling down at you, especially at this time of year. So yeah, good for them.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of say about like especially just somebody that I've obviously seen a lot of this year is Najee Harris, and it's so much more of the second that he had an actual scheme and not just like the dumbest, baldest man of all time calling his plays, much like everybody in Pittsburgh, it feels
Eric
like.
Ten Hag.
Yeah. It suddenly is Najee Harris running headfirst at safeties and barreling them over every time, and he actually looks so much more explosive. And obviously, there's quite a lot of running backs that are doing incredibly well. Like David Montgomery, for example, is having a real career resurgence in Detroit, I think, is another guy. But yeah, for me personally, like obviously you can talk about your Josh Jacobs, your Saquon Barkley's, your Derrick Henrys, but like Najee Harris having the career resurgence as well for me is one that I personally am glad to see, because he was getting like Trent Richardson comps for a bit, which I thought was incredibly harsh. So we balling. It's good to see the league go back to running backs. Yeah,
it's astonishing noticing the difference in a scheme like the Giants going from a player like
Saquon to Devin
Montgomery.
Singletary.
Yeah, Singletary.
Yeah.
Old motor. It's it makes you realise how negligent it was in the first place. Is it like so I wish I'd thought about this beforehand. Are rushing numbers in the NFL like up by any real margin in the last few years?
Well, passing numbers are down this year, for the vast majority of teams, and I think that is correlating with rushing. But it's not like individual rushes as a whole are like up, because obviously you look back at like the early 2000s or like the mid 2000s, you had like Adrian Peterson and like Damian Tomlinson and people like that. But in terms of the actual like
too high shells and stuff,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think tendencies have changed as well. I think teams now aren't as afraid to run in longer situations and in later downs. And I think it's possibly because of people wanting to go for fourth downs a little bit more. They're not as afraid to run on third and medium, or third and a short long. So yeah,
I think it's also possibly like the mobile quarterback does add an element. Like it doesn't feel like it's a coincidence that you look at Derrick Henry, he's having his maybe best years in the last like 5, and he's playing with Lamar Jackson, who's the most mobile quarterback in the league. You look at Saquon Barkley, he's now paired with Jalen Hurts, who's explosive with his legs. You look at like I'm gonna sort of use. I mean, Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery are like a different example, but even then, like they've got like a 1-2 punch going off, in which teams are sort of you either see teams that are like having a lot more success in the running game from their running backs because they've also got a mobile quarterback. Like in Green Bay, Josh Jacobs is now playing with Jordan Love, who's not completely immobile. He's an actual sort of good rusher, I think. And then like maybe he was having like Jacobs was having his like best performances even without scoring touchdowns at that point when he was paired with like Malik Willis, who is basically all legs at this point. Like,
Well, I think as well as that, like I think that it used to be like 5-6 years ago. Well, maybe like 6-8 years ago, it used to be that you would have like your big slugger running backs, and then you would have like a defined like shorter, smaller guy who was like a pass catching running back. And the pass catching running backs weren't really like adept in pass pros. And I think now when you look at that list of guys, none of them, like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, whoever, don't really stand out as much as pass catching backs in the way that we used to think about them. But they're seeing a lot of time on the field just because the all round skill set has improved. And I also think maybe tight ends as well. That it's kind of linked where tight ends now also have a more well rounded skill set where you don't just have the inline tight end and like the receiving tight end. They can all do a bit of both, and I think it all helps.
Good bit of both there.
Yeah.
Good bit of both.
Myself felt for it.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably also the case. Like in terms of having the ability. I mean, you mentioned it just ever so quickly in the middle of that, where you were talking about like pass pro being such a big thing. You look around the league. I mean, Bijan Robinson in the game that the Falcons lost alone had like 4 or 5 of some of the most sturdy pass protection. Another guy that I like in pass protection is Jaylen Warren. I think that he's really good at it as well. There's a lot more in the sort of trusting of letting your running back not only be on the field to carry the ball, but also like they are in there to have a designed pass pro, and they're good at it. Like if you can put like a linebacker on a running back nowadays, and it won't feel like a bad matchup for the running back, whereas it used to back in the day. So yeah,
I mean, it used to be like you would see like Leonard Fournette come onto the field, and you're like, it's such a tell. Whereas now running backs are so much more well rounded that defenses kind of have to honor both when they're on the field, and it's opening up holes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Is that not just part of like everything moving towards a slightly more positionless? There's a versatility demanded of like almost every position.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
wasn't.
But I think
if
even
you're
then,
a line,
like
you have to expect to catch at least 8 passes a game.
Yeah, if you're a line tackle, you have to expect to be targeted 19 or 22 times per quarter, for God's sake.
All right, we spent a little bit longer on the running backs thing than expected. Let's go then to marriages that are doomed then. So I'm going to start us off. I'm going to use a sort of analogy when it comes to actual marriages again. You know when you see those like 2 people and you think they're a fine couple, but like there's no way that this can last. But they haven't gotten married yet, but they're like engaged. And you're like, there's no way.
Situation.
Yeah, this feels like a cursed situation, a poison chalice, if you will. I'm seeing Quinn Ewers go to the New York Giants, and I'm already determined that that's a marriage that's doomed already. He isn't even there yet. There isn't a 100% guarantee, and yet I'm watching it happen before my eyes as the draft process ticks on, and it just screams bad fit, bad vibes, bad team all over again. So that's my marriage that's doomed already. It isn't even a marriage that exists yet. I just think it's doomed if it happens. Let's all pray that they break up before they even get to that point, is what I'm saying.
know that we're rejecting this actually because he's white enough for John Mara to hatch, but I genuinely believe that they will. I believe that they'll probably end up with the first pick. And I believe that they will be of sound enough mind and body go for a Cam Ward of them. But
I mean, there's going to be a few prospects at the top of this draft that I'm not convinced by any of them, like Cam Ward, Chido Sanders, or Travis Hunter. I don't know if I'd do any of those.
Maybe we pick a Hunter and roll into the next season with like Gardner Minshew, but with neighbors.
Like that picture of the Lamborghini and like the shabby lean-to
Oh
garage.
yeah, the Bugatti in the garage. Yeah.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah. No, yeah, no. I mean, I'm not seeing enough about Ewers to really make a judgment, but I will do it anyway. I assume he's got like a little pop gun arm, mobile, but not as mobile as you want him to be.
Yeah,
Probably
pretty much.
doesn't look much of the part. So
Yeah, pretty much. But
Yeah,
but he is in Tennessee where Arch Manning is, and therefore he is in Texas where Arch Manning is. Sorry,
yeah.
and therefore also a John Mara guy.
I don't know too much about Quinn Ewers. I've seen bits of play, but he
You're about to
looks
find
like
out.
someone who would, in a very exaggerated kind of put on southern accent, Instagram reels up about trying different types of like sausage at convenience stores.
That's a really weird projection by you. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't expect to hear that.
Like,
But my marriage that's gonna fail is um is Antonio Pierce with the Raiders, and my closest real life marriage comp, which we don't have to do, but it's kind of just like jumping out to me, is it's like marrying somebody that you were like cheating on your pre-existing spouse with.
Oh yeah.
It's like like hiring an interim coach to be your full-time head coach is like that. It's like the move that everyone knows not to do, and whenever you do it, everyone's like, "Oh no!" and everyone's at the wedding like, "This is awful. It's really predictable what's going to happen." And I mean, when you look at other examples from like years gone by, first of all, I just remember that Jeff Saturday was the interim coach of the Colts. That was a very strange one. It's not actually happened since 2016, when Doug Marrone replaced Gus Bradley. They actually had one successful season, which is that was like the honeymoon period, and then kind of went to mediocrity after that. Mike Malarkey replacing Ken Wisenhunt in 2015. That's not gone too well. Romeo Crennel replaced Todd Haley in 2011 in Kansas City. Different times for the Chiefs. Went 2-14 the next year and got fired. The Vikings had a couple. Leslie Frazier, Mike Tice. None of these have worked out. And history is instructive, and they did it anyway. So, kind of reaping the rewards there. But that ship was doomed to sink from the moment it left port.
like getting married to a rebound.
Yeah, more or
Oh
less.
yeah.
I did search for
Like
a
Angel
rebound.
Reese.
Yeah, but I've just got some very depressing posts from r/relationships over 30.
Oh, Max, that was so good. The Angel Reese thing.
Thank
That
you for
was,
saying that, man.
yeah. I don't have anything to add to the Antonio Pierce thing. I think that you covered it off incredibly well. Sam, who's your marriage that's doomed?
My marriage that's doomed is Lou Anarumo's passionate marriage to Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, the first few years of Lou Anarumo, the defense sucked. And people were like, he's not got the dudes. He took, like, Awuzie and Eli Apple, and I guess that fixed everything. They were pretty good for a while. And I think if they do not... This has been such an atrocious season and such a costly season for them as a team in terms of making the most of the nucleus that they have and the talent on offense, even if it's not been like as well applied as it could be. Like the Bengals offense is not fucking perfect. It's not like they're a nailed on Super Bowl contender.
They kind of feel like they might be, though. That's the mental thing is that I don't know if there's been a team that scored 30 plus points and lost this many games before.
You know the gap between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in fantasy as wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2 is as big as the gap from wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 27.
Yeah, I know, because I've got Jamar Chase in my league that I'm unbeaten in.
It's been a weird down year for... Or not down. It's been a bit of an up and down year for...
I mean, the Lou Anarumo thing is just like... Jesse Bates can't have made that much difference, surely. They've gone off an absolute cliff. Even if it was a big mistake to let him walk, like... Yeah,
I think it was just like a magic in a bottle thing. I'm not emboldened by a narrow victory over the Cooper Rush Dallas Cowboys. I think they need to change something very quickly before they lose another year of like astonishing quarterback wide receiver play to a toilet defense.
In terms of the marriage analogies, it's quite like the Jesse Bates leaving and things going to absolute pot. I mean, it's like, you know, you're married to someone, you move in, and then you sell your favorite armoire, and then things just go to absolute dog afterwards. It's a little bit weird. Like,
we've got nowhere to lounge together.
You're sat there at the airport bar on your 5th Guinness, and you're like, was that fucking closet? Like, was that wardrobe really the cornerstone of our marriage? We should never sold it on Vinted or whatever the fuck people sell shit on. Gumtree.
Oh. Craigslist. Yeah, a little throwback for you there. Oh. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, as I sort of said, I don't think that there's been a team that's lost this many games that they've scored 30 plus points in. It kind of reminds me a little bit like, do you remember when the Chiefs broke like the NFL record for like going 0-2 in games that they scored like 45 and above in, and then still like, but then they turned it around after, and I can't remember if it was just that, did they replace their defensive coordinator after that? The Bengals feel like a team that will be fixed the second that they...
Was that not right, like, towards the very start of the...
Yeah, it was, like, right at the very... It was literally, like, I think it was 2018.
It was Bob Sutton, who Chiefs fans villainized.
Yeah.
And then they obviously replaced him with Spags.
Yeah, and it immediately fixed everything. Yeah, Lou Anarumo is the most fired man in the NFL, I think. I think it points out as well that Joe Burrow is, like, the most, like, irritated that I think I've seen a quarterback in.
It's hilarious.
He is so pissed. And I'm so glad that all of it's going to be on Hard Knocks, which airs every Tuesday night. So we get to see it.
Sorry, were you paid to say that?
No, I'm afraid not. But you'll never know. No, what I also wasn't paid to say is that I think that Shadur Sanders to the Las Vegas Raiders is the most notably going to happen draft pick from this draft. I think that Sanders, being a frisky and clearly quite talented, but also clearly a bit of a head case quarterback, going to this Raiders team, which in itself is a circus, feels very much a nailed-on conclusion, because he's going to be taking the trip from Colorado to Nevada. It's only a short trip, but it'll be a very long few years for the Las Vegas Raiders as this guy continually gets more and more irritated by such a absolute horror show of an organisation. But it will happen, and that's why I think that they are a marriage that is going to be, because I'm matchmaking them, baby.
Do you think how much say do you think Tom Brady would have in this?
If the Raiders were smart, a lot. The Raiders are not smart, so probably not that much.
No, I can see him being pretty vocal about it.
I don't know, like the Shador Sanders thing. Like he's obviously pretty good, but like it doesn't seem like a good fit in Las Vegas because they're gonna suck, and he seems like he would kick off like the most fuss imaginable, like constantly. He'd be throwing people under the bus. It'd be a real headache.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's kind of like a Raiders fan personality.
Exactly. He
Like
is.
Richie Incognito.
He's the most Raiders man in the draft right now. Plus, he's going to be a big name. He's going to be divisive. I think that it's going to happen, and I actually can't wait to see it happen. Because I don't actually like Shador Sanders very much. So him being on a bad team would be quite funny.
Oof. Penny for Desmond Ridder's thoughts. Actually, do you think anyone's ever asked Desmond Ridder his thoughts on anything?
I think it would be dangerous.
He got drafted, like, and no one. He was like, "Oh, my phone's gonna be blowing up. No messages. This just happened."
Did he get drafted in the? Was it the third round he got picked?
So, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He was like the second quarterback off the board that year, wasn't he? After Pickett.
Yeah.
It was a few days after the fact. If we're doing matchmaking, people who I'd love to see get married, I'd love to see Mike Vrabel with the New York Giants because, well, they're a pretty sad sack of shit, to be honest, and I really think Mike Vrabel is kind of like a reliable husband type. I think that he would give the Giants the lift that they're looking for. He would give them a bit of a sense of identity. You know, is he going to take you to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl? Well, probably not without a quarterback, but is that what they need right now? They just need to be in like a B plus or like a B marriage. It doesn't need to be fucking. Hang on, let me just quickly Google best marriage in the world and see best marriage in the world. He doesn't have to be David and Sarah Hiller, or Karam Chand and Qatari Chand. It's it just has to be fine. It has to be like 6 years, and I don't think that the Giants are like a total write off either. I think when you look at the squad, there's some things to work with. You know, Dexter Lawrence is there. They've got what's his name, Malik Neighbors. He's pretty good.
I think a defensive guy would be good for them.
Yeah, I'd like to see them kind of do. They've got Brian Burns as well. I'd like to see them kind of do the thing he did in Tennessee, where you just get like a retread veteran quarterback, like in Ryan Tannehill, who'll get the job done to a decent degree. You know, Sam Darnold maybe that'd be funny, wouldn't it? And then I'd like to see them try and build the whole ship out of Tyrone Tracy, just run the crap out of the ball. You know, have Tyrone Tracy be your budget Derrick Henry, have Malik Neighbors in like the AJ Brown in Tennessee role, and just try and play fundamentally sound football and not be an absolute disaster. Sam, how would you feel about an 8-9 Giants team with 4 Pro Bowlers on?
I would. It'd be about as it would go above my hopes probably more than any Giants season thus far if that happened next season.
There you go. A message to all potential nuptials out there: just settle for what you can get and don't complain. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side.
I have breaking news, not from the world of the NFL, but from the world of football. the 2030 World Cup will be hosted in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia.
No, you've misread that. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco are hosting 2030, and Saudi Arabia are hosting 2034.
That's
Because Saudi Arabia was there was no rivals. They were the only ones who applied for 2034.
okay. What I was reading it off of was the ITV football account that
The
posted
truth is actually much, much stranger because 3 matches in the 2030 tournament will also be held in Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay to mark 100 years of the competition.
I see.
That's a lot weirder.
Well, the ITV football thing tweeted out a graphic of Infantino, and it just said FIFA announced Morocco, Spain, and Portugal and Saudi Arabia as World Cup hosts, but that makes more sense that Saudi Arabia, because I was about to say 4 hosts, 4 for a tournament. That's
No, there's
insane.
actually 6.
No, yeah, there is 6. Yeah, what a dumb
What was it you were
tournament.
saying earlier? Bold, stupid men.
Yeah,
Infantino.
the dumbest, baldest man.
I can't believe he's still there. Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about. Sam, what's your
No.
matchmaking tips for all of the loners out there?
My matchmaking tip would probably be, I didn't come up with a matchmaker, so I'm going to rip one off the dome right now. I think a match I would like to see made would probably be with, I'm going to say,
Yes.
downtrodden, forgotten, miserly Chicago Bears
Yes.
and N.
Johnson.
O-line Johnson.
Ah, there you go.
You've got to do something, man. There's been enough promise in how the Lions run their team and, you know, how they play, even if some of it is, you know, deeply kind of cringy. If the price to pay having Caleb Williams turn into a good quarterback, maybe even one that fulfills the kind of potential that he had, the price that is having a couple of completions to O linemen every game, so that Ben Johnson can, you know, one out by himself, and that's it. I'm happy to pay that.
It's interesting because, like, I've been on this beat where when I watched Caleb Williams, especially earlier this season, I thought, like, he does these throws and you're like, okay, yeah, no, I see exactly what's happening. And then you have other games where normally when it's a 6 p.m. hit this time, like 6 p.m. British time kickoff on Red Zone, the score's 24-3 at half time. The Bears are losing, and you check the ESPN box score, and the total yards, including sack yardage, is like 41. I mean, the one where it was the Niners last was just insane. It was like 4 yards at halftime. I mean, it can't go on like this, can it?
Sorry, I was on mute. It can.
Thank you for saying that.
I think it's what the city of Chicago deserves at the least.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably not going to work anyway.
Yeah.
The Bears
probably
could
not.
get the Joker damaged goods tattoo at this point.
It does feel like the Bears they basically need a sort of Washington Commanders style, just rip the whole thing down and start again type of thing. Kick out the owner, kick out all of the coaching staff. They've already got the new quarterback, but like do it now before he's ruined. Because boy howdy, it's probably not too far off. He's taken a lot of hits this year. Maybe more so than I think I can recall any rookie quarterback taking. And that's mainly because, like, Joe Burrow took a lot of hits in his rookie year, but he got hurt, like, halfway through it and missed the rest.
And that.
So, yeah, they need to figure it out as a whole franchise. But I'm not going to be the one to help him do it, because that's on them to figure out. Yeah, funny. All right, well,
any job offer that arrives in my mail will be met with a resounding no.
Any job offer I receive in the mail will be wet. I have a flooded mailbox.
Sodden letterbox. That is awful.
Is your letterbox like fabric?
No, it's just like a tarp in a hole. Cost letters in here.
Talking, but he's on mute.
Max, give us a team name.
Okay, well, what if there was a team called the Cincinnati Celebrants?
The box is wet, but only because it's my mouth.